Hey everybody, Kent Kentley here. I had a request to do a bookshelf tour, and I am happy to oblige. You've seen a lot of where my comics come from, and you've seen the bottom of this shelf, where more of the kids' books are in some of my new book intro videos. But I thought this would be a fun chance to show you what's sitting here, what I read, what I like, and if you see something that you like that you would like to hear me read, drop a comment down below. So, Mark Twain's Letters from Earth, which also has The Mysterious Stranger in it. This is a great collection, and I would be happy to read more Mark Twain. I know some of you are probably burnt out after I just did Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, which took months and months. Ade's Fables. Now, if you are a fan, and you're probably an older person if you are, of Gene Shepherd, who is the guy that created Christmas Story. These were some stories that Gene Shepherd used to read on his show, and they were also stories that Franklin Roosevelt used to read before he had to deliver bad news. And they're just funny, kind of late 19th century, early 20th century stories. And it'd be fun to do on the channel. My only thing is I'm not positive how many people would get the jokes. I mean, they're like 120-year-old, just silly stories, but I'd give it a shot if people wanted to hear them. And next is The Ways of White Folks by Langston Hughes. This was my late uncle's book, and I just love this come hither look that this picture of Hughes has on the cover. I've never seen a copy of this book since or before that had that particular illustration of him. Lots of good stuff in here. I'm weary of reading stuff from the point of view of other cultures, although I've thought about doing Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, because that was one of the books that my fourth grade teacher read to us, and that is from the point of view of a young black girl in the South. So we'll see. If this interests you, let me know. The Unrest Cure and Other Stories by Saki, who I used to pronounce Sakai, but it is pronounced Saki. Illustrated by my favorite, Edward Gorey. And I have the complete Saki on another shelf, but I had to keep this just because it's got the Gorey pictures. The sad thing is, because this is from the New York Review of Books, it does not have a particularly cool looking spine, just has the name of it on the spine. The October Country, which I already read you the whole book. Such a cool looking book. If you can believe this, I found this in the trash at work. And I found a bunch of other sci-fi stuff in there too, but this is one of the few that I knew I needed to keep. South of No North by Charles Bukowski. Obviously, I will not be reading this on the channel. I think that it's a good idea for a reader to have at least one Bukowski volume. I have read some of these. This one, again, not the sexiest spine in the world, just a Black Sparrow Press edition. I bought this at a bookstore that I loved called Spine and Crown that no longer exists. The Grass Harp and a Tree of Night and Other Stories by Truman Capote. I would absolutely love to read you guys anything from this book. Just let me know. And this one I got from a friend of mine. Well, I only met her once, but I consider her a friend. An old nun gave me this book, Sister Jose Habde, and she had told me about how fun this is. This was a project that Mary Higgins Clark did where a bunch of mystery writers got together and they had to include the words a big book, a thick steak, and something else. And you can see all the names in here. I don't know that I would read this just because of content, but if you can find this, it's a really fun book to go through. The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar and Six More. This particular book I took from my Spanish teacher in 9th grade, who was a terrible person, and we will not speak her name. And There were several other books I borrowed from her that I did give back that I'm sorry for because I would have liked to have had them in my collection, but I'm happy to have this, and I would love to read you some more. I'll try to do Roald Dahl every year, so this might be the Roald Dahl that I will read this year. Graham Greene collected short stories. I am a great fan of Graham Greene, although I have not read as much of him as I should. This again came from my late uncle's house when he passed away. I have not read anything out of this. This is again one where some Graham Greene would be totally appropriate for the channel, some others would not. If you're more familiar with Graham Greene and have a story you'd like to hear, let me know and I'll dig it out of this book. Different Seasons by Stephen King. I probably bought this when it was new. If you're a Stephen King fan, you recognize these covers. This has Shawshank Redemption in it. It has The Apt Pupil, The Body, of course, which Stand By Me is based on, and one called The Breathing Lesson, I believe is the name of the story. I will not be reading any Stephen King on my channel just because his lawyers are vicious and will find me, so you should check this out if you're a Stephen King fan, though. This has some of his best stuff in it. Now, one of my favorites from when I was a teenager, The Wall of the Sky, The Wall of the Eye by Jonathan Lethem. I was a great fan of Jonathan Lethem in the 1990s before he became the pop culture icon that he is today. I cannot get into his new stuff. I don't know why, but I love his old stuff. And I read this book probably 4 or 5 times when I was 15 or 16. Let's move Dr. Doom back. Gabriel Garcia Marquez collected stories. I haven't read any of these. I know the author by reputation more than anything. This again came from my late uncle's house. If you're a Marquez fan, give me a heads up. Say, hey, you know what's a good story to read? And I will dig it out and give it a look. Short stories are easier to just pull out, take a break from, whatever novel I happen to be reading and just read you guys a short story. I like doing that, but either I have to think of it or somebody has to suggest it to me. And actually, nobody suggested me a short story yet, so feel free to do that because I do love reading short stories on the channel. Now this is a cool book. This is also from the New York Review of Books. I was in a club called Classics and Comics, and this is one of the ones that I got from them. And you can see Jonathan Lethem from Wall of the Sky, Wall of the Eye. His name is on this, as well as Alex Abramovich, who I'm not as familiar with, but what I've read of this is really fun, and I will almost definitely be reading you some stories from this. These are kind of Twilight Zone-y, sci-fi type stories, so I'm excited to get into this. Richard Matheson is really the author that I want to focus on this Halloween, but if you're a Sheckley fan and can't wait, give me a holler, and I'll see what I can do. And again, one of my favorites, Gene Shepherd. In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. If you can find it, and it shouldn't be too hard to find, there should be many podcasts that are just recordings of Gene Shepherd's old radio show from the 70s that played in New York. It was in the 60s and 70s. Really amazing show. He's just kind of a free-form talker. And of course, the movie A Christmas Story is based on some of the stuff that's in this book. Another Gene Shepherd, Wanda Hickey's Night of Golden Memories. And another Gene Shepherd, A Fistful of Fig Newtons. The Thurber Carnival by James Thurber is just a great collection of Thurber stuff. I do have some Thurber picture books, actually. Many Moons has been sitting on my desk waiting to be read. I love James Thurber, and I'm sure that I will get to read some to you guys. There's an illustration, less politically correct now than it was then. This is from the War of Men and Women. some of these things. Got a Lego Scooby-Doo, a Lego Daisy. This is the Scrooge figure that came out when Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out. I just got this for my birthday last year when I turned 35. Lego Donald, out of the way. Oops. Set Scrooge up. The Night in Question by Tobias Wolff, who you'll know is the author of, or you may know is the author of This Boy's Life, which is an amazing book. And this book is actually signed, I think, to my dad, not to me. Let's see. Yeah, it's signed to my dad, for Tom, Tobias Wolff. Fragile Things by Neil Gaiman, one of his few short story collections that I don't have in hardcover. I just didn't have money at the time, so I had to buy it in paperback. And again, Neil Gaiman, although I love him, I'm probably not going to read you any Neil Gaiman stories on this channel, because I feel like he's somebody who has lawyers and doesn't want just anybody to read his stories out loud. This lovely, lovely copy of Fantasties by George MacDonald. And this was given to me about 15 years ago for Christmas by a good friend of mine in Tennessee. There you can see my real name in the inscription there. Just isn't that much of a secret.